Well, it's kind of been a unique story through my career. I started riding motorcycles with my family, my mom and dad and my brother. Actually, we used to trail ride and go camping and stuff on the weekends, and riding around in fields and stuff. And I grew up kind of trail riding and doing more off-road riding than I did anything. And when I was 12 and 13, my dad bought me an RM80. I want to say 85 because that's what they are nowadays. An RM80, and I started racing with all the kids and stuff, camping and around the campgrounds and stuff like that, and I was real fast. And a guy that ran a local motorcycle shop named Al Posey told my dad, "You need to take that kid, racing on the weekend." So my dad took me out to a local track here called Sand Hill Ranch here in Brentwood, which is actually still real close to my house. And I went out and I won my first race. My first year out of high school, I rode professional motocross for, here in America, the national circuit in the 125 class. And I think I finished like 13th. Picked up a Yamaha support ride, and the next year finished like 8th or 9th overall in the 125 National Series. The funny thing is, I think throughout my career that's made it so neat is when I came back from Europe, because a lot of people didn't know me because I was in Europe racing motocross. I was in Brazil prior to that. So a lot of the Americans didn't realize my motocross career that I made for myself in Brazil and then in Europe. So when I came back to the States, most people knew kind of who I was and kind of that, he's a motocrosser. So when I did go into the off-road side of the sport, people thought I wouldn't really do that well. I wasn't that big of a threat because I was more a motocrosser, I wouldn't know how to ride off-road. So a lot of people don't know that I had a big off-road influence of my career before I ever got into my motocross career. So when I came back into off-road in the late 90s or the mid-90s, people didn't realize that I did have an off-road background. My brother actually, which is 5 years older than me, Wayne Smith, was one of our top district Northern California enduro riders. So our family was more of an off-road enduro family before I ever got into the motocross side of it. And then I made my motocross career. So when I finally did come back in the mid-90s into off-road, people didn't know that I had that kind of background. And actually, 92, I went and rode for the USA 6-day team. I was put on the trophy team, and I finished second overall in Australia. Came the closest of any Americans ever came to winning. I was 37 seconds. Actually, the results are on that wall right there. I was 38 seconds out of the overall position after 6 days of winning. I finished second overall. Giovanni Sala, which is a real famous 6-day, won 6 days many times, he won it. It was pretty cool because every test we would go back and forth. But day 2, I actually crashed in a test, lost 32 seconds on him that day. And that's pretty much what's cost me the 6 days overall right there, that one day. The other side of things I look at is when I came back to America and started doing my off-road career, I think one of the things that's helped me out, because I'm the only rider from the West Coast or west of the Mississippi that's ever won the GNCC circuit, because America's so big. The West Coast racing off-road is a lot more deserty, a lot more faster. Even when we do a national hare scrambles event or something like that on the West Coast, it's not the same as an East Coast one, because East Coast is just different terrain. And I know a lot of people have always wondered why has Rodney Smith been so successful in the GNCC series on the East Coast? Because he's grew up in California. He's a West Coast rider. No other West Coast riders ever went east and dominated like that. And I contribute a lot of that to riding GP motocross, living in Brazil. I've raced in 40 different countries, so I've rode in sand, I've rode in clay, I've rode in hardpack, I've rode in rocks, I've rode all different types of terrain over my career because of living in Europe and living in Brazil and being able to race in all the different countries. I think that's helped me be able to race GNCCs. It's helped out because I'm used to different terrain and mud, and racing in England, it always rained, it was muddy and stuff. Whereas it seems to be a little bit harder for an East or West Coast rider to go back east. Caselli tried it a couple of years ago in the GNCC circuit, and Ty Davis has tried it a few times. And I think I've been fortunate enough to be kind of a well-rounded rider, and I contribute that to riding GP motocross. I've always said through the years that winning the first championship's easy, the second one's the hardest. But if anybody can do it, I know Josh has got the talent. To me, by far, he's the fastest rider out there. He's got a lot of talent, but I think if anybody's going to beat him, it's going to be him having to beat himself. I think mentally, he still needs a few things to work on, but I think if Josh can keep it together, I don't think there's anybody that can beat him for sure. He's the strongest rider on the track. He's got the most speed. He's got good equipment under him, and he's got good people behind him. So he's definitely, as long as that number 1 doesn't get too heavy. Actually, if I had to predict a couple different championships next year, I would almost have to say Josh for the GNCCs, and I would still predict Charlie Mullins to win the National Enduro title.